Welcome everyone. In this session, we are going to discuss about the variables and the various types to declare it in JavaScript. So, what are waiting for? Let's start. Moving ahead, what are the operations we are going to perform should be under strict mode only. Use strict. Mostly, any application needs to work with information. For instance, an online shop where the information might include the goods being sold, that is a shopping cart. The other example may be of an organization where the information might include the employees, departments, and much more. Variable can be imagined as like a container in which we can store value in order to process data. Remember a point in JavaScript that the variables are loosely or dynamically typed. That is, a variable can hold a value with any type of data. A variable is just a named placeholder for a value. In JavaScript, var keyword is used to create a variable. To declare a variable, we need to use the var keyword followed by the variable name, that is var ename. In this case, the variable ename is declared and holds a special value, that is undefined. A variable name can be any valid identifier. After declaring a variable, we can assign a value to the variable like ename equals Smith. This statement represents defining a variable ename by the value Smith. Since Smith is a string value, hence we can place it in between either a single or double quotes. Console.log of ename. Now reload the page. The generated output is Smith. At the same time, we can also declare and define a variable in a single statement. The terms either initialize or define a variable meant the same. We can rewrite the code as var job equals manager. We can also declare multiple variables using a single statement, and each variable declaration is separated by a comma. For instance, var ename equals king, comma, age equals 50, comma, job equals president. As mentioned earlier, we can also store even a number in the variable ename, that is ename equals 4 times 9, though it is not recommended. Now, let's understand the difference between undefined and undeclared variables. An undefined variable is a variable that has been defined since we have not assigned it a value, hence the variable uses the undefined as its initial value. For instance, var department console.log of department. This evaluates to undefined since the variable department is declared but not defined. Whereas an undeclared variable is the one that has not been declared in the accessible scope, that is console.log of cell. This evaluates to reference error since the variable cell is not declared yet. Now reload the page and let's analyze the output. The variable department is declared but not defined, therefore its value is undefined, whereas the variable cell has not been declared yet, hence accessing it causes a reference error which clearly says cell is not defined. In JavaScript, all variables exist within a scope that determines the lifetime of the variables and finally decides which part of the code can access them. JavaScript mainly has two scopes, that is global and function scopes, whereas ES6 introduced a new scope called block scope. If we declare a variable outside of a function, JavaScript adds it to the global scope. But if we declare a variable inside a function, JavaScript adds the variable to the function scope. In JavaScript, we can define a function as function followed by function name, that is say greeting, opening closing parenthesis, followed by curly braces. Now define a local variable inside the function, local variable, where message equals hello, console.log of message. This evaluates to hello. Here we defined a function named sayGreeting, which consists of a local variable named message with a string value hello. Now call the function sayGreeting. Let's reload the page. The generated output is the string hello. Since the variable message defined locally inside the function, hence the local variable message can be accessible only inside the function. Now let's try to access the variable message outside the function also, that is console.log of message. This evaluates to reference error since the variable message is not globally declared. Now reload the page. We can see only the first console.log statement is displayed as string hello, and then we have a reference error since the variable message is not defined outside the function scope. Now let's understand the concept of variable shadowing. Now define a global variable which must exist outside the function. Global variable where message equals welcome. This evaluates to hello and this evaluates to welcome. Here we have two variables that must share the same name, that is message, but with different values and different scopes. One belongs to global and second belongs to local scope. Now reload page. The generated output are the strings hello and welcome. Let's analyze the execution of the code. First, the function sayGreeting is being called and it prints the string hello, which represents local variable. Later the statement console.log is being called from the outside of the function scope and it prints the string welcome, which represents global variable. Inside the sayGreeting function, the global variable message is shadowed by the local variable hello, resulting the global variable message cannot be accessible inside the sayGreeting function, but can be accessible only outside the function. This concept is called variable shadowing. Now, the target is to access the global variable message inside the sayGreeting function. We can achieve the target only after the removal of the where keyword mentioned inside the sayGreeting function, which resists us to create a local variable. Therefore, instead of this statement, it should be only message equals hello. Now reload the page. The generated output is the same, that is string hello, which appears twice. Since we are referring only the global variable, but meanwhile inside the function we change the value from welcome to hello. Although it is possible to refer a global variable inside a function, but it is never recommended since the global variables are very difficult to maintain and may potentially cause confusions. Now let's comment out the useStrict keyword to perform the operation under non-strict mode. For instance, define a function and declare a variable message. However, we are not going to use the where keyword, that is function sayGreeting message equals hello. Currently, we are not using where keyword while declaring the variable. Now, console.log of message. Now call the function sayGreeting console.log of message. Now reload the page. The generated output is the same, that is string hello, which appeared twice. It's strange. Let's analyze. Since when we call sayGreeting function, the JavaScript engine looks for the variable named message inside the scope of the function. As it does not found any variable declared with that name, so it goes up to the next immediate scope, which is the global scope in this case, and again searches whether or not the variable message has been declared. Since the JavaScript engine does not found any global variable named message, so it creates a new variable with that name and adds it to the global scope. Now let's perform the same operation under strict mode. Use strict. The only target is to avoid creating a global variable accidentally inside the function because of the removal of the where keyword. Hence, we use the strict mode by adding the use strict at the beginning of the JavaScript file or a function, that is use strict followed by the function sayGreeting. Now this evaluates to reference error since the variable message is not declared. Let's reload the page. Got generated with the error, that is reference error, message is not defined. Hence, from now onwards, we should always use the strict mode in our JavaScript code to eliminate some JavaScript silent errors and make our code run faster. Now, let's understand the concept of variable hosting in JavaScript. Hosting is the mechanism in which JavaScript engine moves all the variable declarations to the top of their scope, which may be either function or global. If we declare a variable with where keyword, the variable is hosted to the top of its enclosing scope, resulting if we try to access the variable before its declaration, the variable evaluates to undefined but not undeclared. For instance, console.log of ename, where ename equals Smith. JavaScript engine moves the declaration of the variable ename to the top. However, it keeps the initial assignment of the variable remain untouched. So this snippet is equivalent to the snippet where ename console.log of ename, resulting this evaluates to undefined. Ename equals Smith. Now reload the page. Got generated with the output as undefined, since the variable ename is hosted to the top and keeps the initial assignment of the variable remain untouched, which results the output as undefined. If there were no concept of hosting exists, then we should get a reference error since we reference to a variable that was not declared till now. Moving ahead, let's have a look for the usage of let and const keywords. From ES6, we can use the let keyword to declare a variable. The let keyword is similar to the where keyword. However, variable declared using the let keyword is block scope, but not function scope. For instance, where cell equals 2000, age equals 40, initiating with block, let temp equals cell equals age equals temp. Now let's check the value of block scoped variable temp. Console.log of temp. Here we declare the temp variable within a block surrounded by the curly braces. Now reload the page. Got generated with the error, that is reference error, temp is not defined. Since the temp variable only exists inside the block, therefore any reference to it from outside of the block will cause a reference error. Moving ahead, let's check how to create constant in JavaScript. To declare a constant, that is unchanged variable, we must have to use const keyword instead of let. The variable that we declared must be initialized immediately with a value, and that value cannot be changed afterward. For instance, const designation in uppercase equals manager. Designation equals salesman. Console.log of designation. This evaluates to type error since we are trying to change the constant variable. Now reload the page. Got generated with the error, that is type error assignment to constant variable, since the value of the constant cannot be changed.